So how do you feel about food? And how do you feel about your body? As someone who's struggled with disordered eating, poor body image, pretty much her whole life, and managed my whole life, these are two things that I've had a love-hate relationship with. So before I continue, warning about this video that there are some emotional triggers that I'm going to talk about in my story of how I've the struggles with disordered eating, and so please be advised if you are sensitive to that type of subject matter. Anyway, for disordered eating, to laxatives, to binging and then throwing up, to caffeine pills and patches, to dangerous cleanses, liquid diets, eliminating all food groups except one, overexercising. I remember just running nonstop around a track for just eons because I ate something bad, and welts formed in my armpits, and the skin chafed so much between my thighs that I was bleeding. And so overexercising, to not eating for days and doing dangerous fasts that I know is something that some people do now, and it's actually, you can actually manage your health in that way. But when you don't eat for days and you're lacking a lot of energy, that's not very healthy. So I've done it all, and I started when I was a kid. I remember I went on my first diet when I was 8 years old, and I eliminated all meat from my diet because at the time, in the 90s, fat was the enemy. From the media to not meeting the stereotypical waif thin Asian body type, to family members and friends, pressure from them, pressure from myself, negative comments from family members. Asian families are notorious for that kind of stuff. These all contributed to my destructive behavior. And what happened was, when I was a teenager, you really don't feel like you have a lot of control in your life. There's a lot of external factors at the time that really determines your self-esteem, right? Because you care so much about what other people think of you that you don't really have an internal motivation or love for yourself. And so by controlling my eating, there was a sense of control in it all. It's like an easy equation, right? The less you consumed, your body respond, and you will lose weight. There's a sense of certainty in that pathway. And so over time, less calories in and more calories out. It's a simple equation. And over time, the more you had control over that, the more weight you lost. And it became a never-ending game of creating unrealistic rules to follow. And it could be like, if you have one M&M, you're gonna have to do 100 push-ups type of thing, and this kind of punishment around bad foods. I'll get more into that later. This is gonna be a long video. And then when you lose control, which happened, eat more than you should, according to these silly rules of yours, then guilt and the self-hate begins again, and you have to do things to make yourself feel better. I remember in grade 9, I had followed all of the rules. I don't even remember the rules I had created for myself, and for an entire week, I was really good, right? I still have these good and bad words. And it was just after dinner, and I was really craving a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I was just starving. I was ravenous. And so I got up and made one. I went to the kitchen, made a sandwich, and I scarfed it down within a mere seconds. And I was licking the jelly off my fingers, I began to feel my stomach drop, and this kind of feeling of doom and gloom. Everything I had done, everything I had accomplished that week of following all these rules, basically went down the drain, and I had completely fucked it up. I lost control, broke the rules, and I needed to regain control over it. And so what I did was I ran to the bathroom, got a toothbrush, put it down my throat, and tried to force myself to vomit. And it didn't work. So I ended up using my fingers, both my fingers, went down to the back of my throat, and this brown and red slurry just forced itself out into the toilet. I remember it was a quiet night. Everyone in my family was upstairs. I was downstairs in the bathroom doing this. And I could feel the sourness and the acids from my stomach linger on the back of my teeth. But as they lingered, it's like this sense of relief came over me that I had course corrected my, the bad things that I'd done, the eating of the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And I want to delve like a little bit deeper into why I developed the disordered eating. I mean, there were, yes, absolutely pressures, in my Asian family comparing, media, those external factors. But I think really it came down to a lot is myself and pressures from myself and a sense of control that I didn't have in my life. I've mentioned before I'm a recovering perfectionist, and so it started when I was a teenager when I wanted to check all these boxes. Life was a series of check boxes and standards and expectations I had created for myself, constantly striving for perfection, whether it's grades or piano or doing well in Chinese school or making the basketball team or, being popular, getting invited to the parties or looking a certain way. Everything in my life had to be met. And I wanted to be as well-rounded as possible. I didn't want to be perceived as an ignorant banana, because therefore I wanted to learn my language. I didn't want to be perceived as a complete nerd who didn't know how to play basketball or play sports. And so I did that. I didn't want to be, just an academic. So I worked part-time since I was 14. Just trying to balance everything in my life. And this word balance became destructive to me, trying to do it all. And it wasn't just about the grades. Like, people think you're a perfectionist and you care so much about getting, 100% on everything. It wasn't just that, because once you've mastered the school system, which I've talked to you guys about in the previous video about how, I did well in school and it came easy to me because it's just about following rules. Once you've mastered that game, which is, I call it an institution, the school, then I've had to find other things to challenge myself. Because when you're an overachiever, if you've done one thing well, it's like, well, what else is there? You gotta you gotta start getting a boyfriend, because, that's another challenge. You have to look a certain way, and that's where that came, to look, what I saw as perfection physically. Anyway, so in 2002 was when I hit rock bottom, and that was when I resorted to physical harm, which was cutting myself and cutting my just little nicks on my wrist to make myself feel better. If I had broken a rule that day that I created for myself, or I didn't do well in a quiz, or I didn't practice piano to the nth degree that I wanted to, And, it's been 18 years since I hit that rock bottom, and, since I've learned to manage my mental health. But it doesn't make me immune to those destructive behaviors. And really, it's about the eating that still lingers in me. I don't self-harm. Depression is far, I haven't had an episode in a very long time, since, I would say, since I was a teenager. But the eating part, it just carries with me. And so as part of my recovery in, self-harm, depression, and disordered eating, I really had to drill down in myself and self-reflect on why I was eating the way I was eating. And it really, the reason why I wanted to control my eating is because I wanted to control my feelings. And so I delved deep, and I realized when I felt inadequate, I ate. When I felt numb, I ate. When I felt pain, I ate. When I felt bored, I ate. And when I was overwhelmed, I ate. When I felt like celebrating, I ate. When I felt, and so overall, almost many years, I realized that emotions are not reasons to eat. What reasons are, what are the reasons to eat anyway? To be hungry. When you're hungry, you should eat. You eat to nourish your body, and you eat to fuel your brain so that I can speak, so I can write, so I can create the things I want to create for the world. I eat to feed my muscles so I can pick up my children off the floor and hold them, so I can hug my husband, so that I can walk with my daughter, and grocery shop and go do all the daily activities of living that I want to do. And that took many years to figure out, like from that just horrible past of mine to this point where I'm like, postpartum, second kid, this ups and downs throughout my life with eating has been a rocky journey. And it still takes years. It still takes time for me to figure it all out. It took years to figure out to this point, and I don't see it like having this little bow-tied present of a solution for me. And what really worked for me, which may work for you, I don't know, is to be in tune with your body. And it's about being mindful when you're eating and really savoring the flavors and the textures and the bites that you're taking in your food. Because when you do that, reinvigorated my love for food. And when you really appreciate your food in that way, rather than using it as a type of almost like a crutch to manage your emotions, it really changes the way you see food. So I'm at this path. I'm in recovery. I'm still in recovery, but it's like I'm in a good balance right now. I see food as a necessity. I see it as an essential part of my being. I love to cook. I've mentioned that many times before. I love how to know how the ingredients are grown, shopping for groceries, just putting ingredients together. The love for food that I have has changed drastically from when I was a teenager. But for this video, what I want to talk about is how I parent and how that destructive past of mine has affected the way I am as a mom. So I'm extra sensitive to just the way how I eat, when I eat, what I talk about when I'm eating, how I talk about food around my children, because it's like I don't want to put an emphasis on food and eating, but I also don't want it to be off my radar, because I know it is very common amongst a lot of teenagers, whether it's unhealthy eating, just binging, or all these poor eating patterns. So I don't want it to be off my radar, but I don't want to I don't know how much emphasis to put on it. So I want to teach my kids to, have a healthy relationship with food, but without drawing too much attention to it. You know what I mean? So I want to be monitoring closely, but not too closely. Isn't that that's how with parenting generally is? But because of my past, I'm just hypersensitive. Because I always think like, am I just being sensitive to this, or is there actually something going on with my kids? So here are some guidelines that I've been following to help me kind of stay on track for myself, and I'm hoping these guidelines will help you if you are more sensitive to disordered eating as a parent. So the number one thing that I try not to do, and it's hard for me, like a lot of experts recommend, is to don't force your kid to finish their plate. And it's tough because growing up, Asian families, I know for me, my parents, especially my mom, would often tell us, if there's a few grains of rice left in your bowl, you're gonna get that every grain of rice that you don't finish, you get a beauty mark. So as you can see, I probably didn't finish enough rice as a kid. So there's that, and then also this other thing that my parents would say, there's starving kids in Africa, you better finish your food kind of idea. And that's what I grew up with. And so it's like this mentality that when there are, even just a spoonful of food left, that you feel like there's this need to finish it. And when you're taught that as a kid, that could really fuck up the way you eat, especially when you go to restaurants and the portions are often really massive and you feel like you need to finish the plate. So that's one of the things I've tried to follow. Realistically, it's tough, especially when you see your daughter or your kid, your son or your daughter, literally have a spoonful of left of food, and you're like you can't finish that. Like, I'm not gonna throw it down the drain. It's like this mentality that you don't want to waste food. You want to be resourceful. You want to be frugal, and you know what went into all the effort into preparing that meal. And you see them not finish that last bite or 2 bites. And I do struggle with it. There's some days I do just tell her, just finish it. And then I catch myself from saying that. So that's definitely something that's hard for me to break away, realistically. Second guideline is don't use food as a reward and punishment, as part of the reward and punishment system. As I said earlier about labeling food as good or bad, right? Like desserts are bad food, or, junk food, chips, pop, cookies, any sort of like snackish, the stuff that we all know is bad. And then the good food are like your vegetables and your whole grains and your like your lean meats and stuff like that. So it's getting rid of that labeling system, and not using it as a reward, that if you do something good you're going to get an M&M, and if you do something bad then you have to eat vegetables, or you have to finish your vegetables before you have dessert, or because then what you do is you start labeling these food that when your kids grow up, they're going to associate those foods with feelings, right? They're going to associate, when I did something good, I want to have something good. When I did something bad, I deserve something good. Or, it's like that. It conditions them to think food as feelings, as part of controlling your feelings. So that's really hard, to be honest. Especially when your dog, once your kid has a slice of chocolate cake, or they have a cookie with chocolate chips in it, it's really hard for them not to like it, because it's sweet. It makes them feel good. There's a sugar, it's just a great experience. And often they're also associated with the celebrations, right? Whether it's birthdays or, whatever celebrations that you can think of. So it's really tough to not associate food with a sense of like some sort of feeling, and I have to confess here that I've used food as a way to get her to do stuff. Like, she won't get out of the bath, so I'm like, well, if you get out of the bath, I'll let you have some sort of sweet treat or some sort of treat, and because it's like, because that's what they want, and that, and I've also used television or like Paw Patrol or other things to get her to do stuff as like kind of a reward and punishment system. And even though I've told myself not to do that, like, I still do it, because you can't. They say there are other ways to do reward and punishment, but it is the quickest way. If you want your kid, it's like I want my kid to do something quickly. I don't have a lot of time. What's going to motivate them the most? Like a good pat on the back, compliments. Yeah, I can definitely say that they're doing a good job, that they're really good, and I can hug them and reward them in many different ways of love, right? You can, tell them that you'd read a book with, a lot of different things that you can show. But it's like these quick things, television, food, you can use. And that's my realistic experience about it. But the one thing that I am really striving towards is that dessert is like, you can have, it's just another food, right? It's just another food for me. And, I don't do the whole, you have to finish your vegetables before you have dessert. That just really goes against what I believe in. And so like, we still just do, we'll let her, like, and one of the things that I'd like to do is that I like to cook and I like to bake. So a lot of desserts that we have are actually, I've made myself. Like, I'll bake banana bread, and I know what goes into it. And I often use half the sugar, and I put like, flax and chia seeds into it. Or like, if I make pumpkin bread or whatever, then it's like, I know it's not like that, too much, right? Too much full of sugar. So that's been tough, but one of the guidelines that I try to follow. The third thing is teaching them how to enjoy food, and this is like my favorite thing to do. It's actually been really easy to teach them how to enjoy food. Like, I love to talk to her about like what kind of taste, like what flavors are you tasting, what's the texture, and then like just like teaching them to enjoy it. And then like there's this thing that my sister noticed, is that whenever we have a meal, me and my daughter would go like this, like, and it's just something that I naturally do, and she started doing that too, and she really enjoys her food, and she really enjoys whatever we're eating, and it's been really cool. And with our son, he's not what started solids yet. So what we've been doing is we've let him smell a bunch of different foods. Like, we smelled apples. He smelled like my apple cider vinegar. He smelled like, just like little, and just like getting him exposed to the flavors has been really exciting. So it's one of the ways to teach them to enjoy food as like an actual, it's like a fun activity, regardless of what food it is, whether it's like, the funny looking broccoli or, mushy peas or whatever, right? The fourth thing is telling them to slow down, right? Like, enjoy the food, mindfully eating it. As I said, like about the textures, the flavors, the taste, everything about the food. It's telling them to slow down. And I think, I don't know if it's just an Asian thing or like I don't know what it is, but like it's almost like growing up, whoever ate fastest was like the best or something like that. There's always this race to who can eat the fastest. And I think it came down to like when my dad was growing up, he had 8 brothers and sisters, so there was 8 of them. And if you didn't eat fast, there literally was no food. So he would pride himself on being a fast eater. He would tell me like all, the family of 10 would share one chicken. And if you don't get there fast, you're gonna get the chicken butt, or you're gonna get like barely a wing left. So he ate really fast, and throughout his whole life, he ate really fast. To this day, he still eats fast. Like, you eat with him, he'll like be done in a minute. He'll take the whole thing, put it in his mouth. Like desserts, he'll just eat and go, right? And so it's changing that mindset to, let's slow down, let's eat slowly, let's enjoy the food, let's mindfully taste every nook and cranny of that bite. And realistically, sometimes it works if you've got the time and you don't have a bunch of things that you need to do. But as we know, life happens, and you've got things that you need to do, things that you need to go to. Maybe you have an event that you're preparing for, you have to eat dinner before that, or they've got lessons or things like that, and you can't eat slowly. You have to eat fast because you got to keep going. And it may be on the go, and you can't always slowly eat your food, and sometimes you want your kid to eat faster because you don't have a lot of time. So it's like, I think it's moderation, right? Like, it's about trying to do that as much as you can, but when times where you kind of have to hurry it up, it's okay to just, eat faster, bring the food with you. The last thing, another thing was involve them in the food shopping and the meal preparation. And my kids are a little young for that right now, but I have involved my daughter in, when we're baking, she'll help put the muffin liners and help put the raisins in and stuff like that into the batter when we're baking. But yeah, that's definitely, I involved them in the food shopping, when, obviously not during this time when it's the COVID crises, pandemic going on. I definitely involved them in the, when we grocery shop, she loves it. We go there, we pick everything, and when we're cooking, she can smell it, right? If I'm cooking something, she'd be like, oh, I smell something. I smell onions, or I smell sausages, or smell whatever it is I'm cooking. So I think that's something that I can definitely try and do more, once they're older and they can actually hold a knife and start cutting things for me, or grating carrots or things like that. Eat meals as a family and really encourage it as a pleasant experience. Family dinners for me growing up has always been a thing where we would almost always have family together as a family. And during that time, you talk, you converse, you talk about what went on during your day, and you actually share a lot of things about your life in that interaction, because aside from that time, when are you actually all together? Usually if you are in the car all together, someone's always maybe driving, they can't really pay attention, or they're, and as your kids get older, they're going to have their own life, their own, online virtual life that they're going to check out. And so I think it's really important to encourage it as a pleasant experience, and so that they can associate dinner with a good memory. And it's definitely tough, but it's also good if during those family dinners you just kind of put like the conflict aside. If there is a fight that you're having with your husband or your wife, or it's because you don't want to really associate bad things with dinners. I mean, it's hard to always meet that, especially if feelings are heightened and things get talked about. And then the last thing, that a guideline that is not really about food, but rather about like how my kids look and how much they are, how tall they are and how much they weigh. When they're babies, people want to know, right? Like, how much does he weigh now? How long is he? Where is he on the growth curve? And it's fine because because they're interested, right? Whether how one baby compares to another. I'm holding this baby, it's so heavy. Oh, compared to that baby, it's so light, right? And so you kind of want to know these things. But then, as even in the growth chart, it says like it's not very helpful or beneficial to track the weight of a child after the age of 10. And I think that's going to be something that I'm hypersensitive about always, around like family members and friends who they're going to be asking like, oh, how tall is she now? Where is she on the growth curve? And it's like, I think it'll come to that point where she's aware of her body and what she looks like, that I'm going to have a conversation. And I'm gonna start saying to these people, I don't think it matters how tall she is or how much she weighs. It's let's not talk about that. And here's my story of why I don't think it should be a topic of interest. So those are kind of my things I'm following, and my realistic expectations around it, and hopefully it helps you in your journey if you are healing from disordered eating or any sort of self-harm, poor body image, and you've got kids and you really don't want to influence them too much, but you're also kind of you want to put it on the radar. Hopefully these are some tips, and always just be easy on yourself, and don't take it, if you don't meet a certain expectation, if you decide, one day or tomorrow you start using M&Ms again as a reward system, it's okay. It's kind of the overall experience, the overall journey that matters for a child, and really the child is going to remember how they feel, not necessarily exactly what was done or what was said. They just want their moms and dads to be positive role models, have a positive experience in their childhood generally, and that their love of food will always is there, and that they're not going to use that as a crutch. So hopefully that helps. Let me know what your tips are. What are things that you've done in your family? I'd love to know. And this is just some of my thoughts on the matter. So let me know. Comments below.